I am Joshua K. Sabra, Esquire, and he is Dr. Miles Salisbury, and you are listening to the Miles Ahead podcast, where we share tactics, techniques, and protocol to improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while you walk the path of the warrior. Stay tuned. Today's episode, Dr. Miles Salisbury and I discuss masculinity and femininity and how it is impacting our parenting conversations, our home conversations, and ultimately how our home conversations have affected our agency and whether or not you are a victim of learned helplessness, and if you are, what can be done about it. Stay tuned.
And we're back.
Oh yeah. It's go time, baby. Miles, I see you're wearing a jersey. It's preseason for Arsenal?
Yep. Just beat Man U yesterday. But preseason doesn't really mean anything, as in all sports. But it's fun. It's coming back. Premier League's coming back.
I'm excited. Someone told me that, I don't know if this is true or not. Someone told me that Wrexham men beat Chelsea.
They drew.
Yeah,
I think maybe they had some in the preseason. That no matter if you win or draw, used to practice penalty shootouts. So maybe they won that shootout. I don't remember, but yeah, they did pretty well against.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and hopefully Chelsea bombs in this year. That'd be great.
What do you listen to?
I just rediscovered. What is it called? Walking on the Sun, Empire of the Sun, Walking on the Moon, I think it's called. I can't remember what it's called.
Walking on a Dream?
Walking on a Dream, that's it. Yeah. Classic. And then a lot of the Man Uncivilized podcast.
Feels good. Feels good. You got some positive vibes on the song, and you got Unlearning How to Be Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah. He's got a lot of good stuff on that. Yeah. He's good. Him and Connor are buddies, and they've been on each other's podcast. And I'm doing Connor's Working with Men mentorship program now. And I'm going to do his. Connor's is like a 3-month, really deep and dive intensive, really cool. His is like a 3-day, Travers is a 3-day thing out in Colorado, like 8 hours a day kind of a thing. So it'll be cool just to see how he does it a little bit differently and get some more skill set. You just want to be like really competent in what you do, like super competent. The more competent you can get over time, over and over and over, the better you'll be, right? It's good to cross train and get to know a lot of different things in a lot of different areas, because you never know what learning to ice skate will inform you about using a samurai sword in Aikido or whatever. Cutting, you just never know. But you want to be super in-depth and competent in the craft that you're trying to do the majority of your day. If it's your job or your purpose of meaning or your side hustle or your hobby or whatever gives you the juice, your calling, that's what we want to be refining, like sharpening the sword on every day. Competent. So every training I do in the realm of psychology counts towards that. And then within that realm, it's like, hey, what are you niching, whatever you want to say the proper way, French way, then that's where you want to be extra competent. So if my niche is now working with men, I want to do more working with men stuff. I haven't super decided if that's it, but it feels like it's going that way. I still like to work with women, but there's something about men that is really needed right now in this time period. Not that women don't either, but guys, we don't know what a healthy version of masculinity looks like. Traver's like, we have the Marlboro man and then the sensitive new age guy. Like bad archetypes, like really spread off into the spectrum. We need to bring those to the middle, and then you probably have a healthy version. Like you need a healthy masculine and feminine. So there's a big movement to work with men, and you see like the splinter groups going in the wrong direction, like the red pill community and all those guys, like where like maybe 1% is like good, and the rest is like, dude, that's just the Marlboro man in a different cover. Or you have the other guys that are like, I will never touch a weapon or a gun, and I will never do martial arts, and I will have long hair and I'll have a spiritual name and like I'm going to be kumbaya and have a drum circle. And if I do that, girls are like, well, that's a sensitive new age guy, like 2.0 from the 1960s. Like, is that good? I mean, maybe for some guys, but those two, it's like, I want the right arm and not the left, or I want the left arm and not the right. We got to bring that back together to have a whole body. Anyways, this is a long way to say that I'm listening to that podcast.
Well, you've hit on a lot, in that description, but the you talked about the new age guy and the Marlboro man, and I like I don't know if it was Jordan Peterson or some podcaster was just saying that Andrew Tate is a 14-year-old boy's idea of of masculinity.
That sounds about right. Yeah,
and because what they have, in many cases, in many families, young boys have experienced ruinous empathy, which is that new age guy who's just permissive and doesn't have any boundaries, or a subtle form of manipulation by one or both parents, and they don't really have any firm boundaries. And like you point out, the demonstrated masculinity, which boundaries are a big part of. I mean, some moms kill it, by the way.
They do their best, but there's at some point, I just don't know if they can. It's like asking the father to like, will you go ahead and explain to your daughter what her now period is and how to deal with it? Like, and these introductions to femininity, like you can and you will if you're a single dad, but it's just not going to be the same. Like a felt experience of knowing what that's like, or like guiding your daughter through pregnancy. You don't know what that's like. There's some subtle differences that you can try your hardest to do, but you just need, if it's not your parent, it's a uncle, grandfather, somebody that has that archetypal felt sense of knowing what that's like, that gets you there. But yeah, the single parents will do their best, and thank God. It's better than no parents, especially for attachment reasons. Hell yeah. But when we're talking about initiations and like getting good senses of what that means, it's real easy for it to go off the rails if there's not a healthy balance of the two feminine and masculine types in the family. It all fit. So by and large, we got to go back to not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And some things we have thrown out, we got to maybe bring back in healthy ways. We need to reevaluate. We've tossed everything out, and it's like, we got nothing. We got nothing but the extreme polarizations, which obviously aren't working.
Well, this is a different conversation that sets up a different podcast, because the cultural norms that existed have been slain decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they hadn't been slain, the most humans in my meeting, in my upbringing, had a dysfunctional and unhealthy masculine and a dysfunctional and unhealthy feminine element inside of them. And whether, whatever, you said we need to go back, I don't know that horse gets back into the barn, because the circumstances of birth, for most, okay, I want to say most, a large swath of people. I'm going to pull the last piece of literature that I read on this, which was from 2018, but it was something like 26% of Americans, no, 26% of Americans, that's an adverse childhood experience. About 20% of Americans have the experience of having multiple sets of parents in their childhood experience. So meaning that dad leaves, new dad leaves again, new dad leaves again, or mom and dad, or new household, right? And so just to give you some numbers on how the U.S. fits with this, it's 8.5% of the United States experiences 3 or more maternal changes.
Maternal
changes.
Wow.
And that's stratospherically larger than the next closest, which is Sweden, which is at 2.6%.
Really? Sweden?
Sweden.
Of all
And
places, I would never thought
France,
Sweden.
0.5. So
French.
the menage a trois doesn't last, apparently.
It's fun in the moment, but
You go through depression, you take a lover, the season ends, and so does the love affair. But my postulate is that it is important. We would do well to establish a societal norm in the United States that we could all draw from. However, with rampant instability and built into families, it is difficult to.
Where's the balance?
Well, not only that, where's the balance, but what are you're hoping that parents will embody these things for their kids, which is great. But then that means that everybody has to, read a fairly progressive or modern book on, something to enhance their self-awareness around their own masculinity and femininity.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what we're supposed to do on this earth, right? It's like better ourselves. It's like, what have we thrown away and what do we not want to come back? How do we redefine it? How do we take what's developed and work that in too? Because obviously, in the 1800s, people didn't think being gay was real or being trans was real. Like you couldn't even talk about it, except for, prior in like the Roman times and the Greeks, like it was just normal. And so that's back in the culture. How do we weave that in a healthy way so it's not, sort of just a trend or a fad, which is really not good.
But I'm a heteronormative guy, but the
cisgendered.
The same in my generation is when people started to refer them to themselves. If you were a heteronormative person, you were a muggle.
A what?
A muggle. It's from.
Interesting.
You know what that's from?
No.
It's from Harry Potter.
Oh yeah.
So the non-magical people are the normies, the muggles.
Boring.
That's right. So it is these people self-refer in a pejorative sense.
Yeah, that's where it gets a little dangerous.
Even
right?
a fantasy pejorative sense.
Yeah.
And there may, you can have self-deprecating behavior, humor. I understand that. And what I don't understand, and I wouldn't agree with, is I'm fine with being labeled heteronormative or cisgendered or whatever, because to me it doesn't feel non-magical.
It's a good distinction.
It doesn't feel like anything.
Like you're being told that you're less than or bad.
No, I give two shits. It's the same reason why I have no emotional attachment to white privilege. When people say like, well, that's your white privilege talking, I'm like, cool. I exist inside of an experience of one, and this is I've just been this way. Now we could talk about how I am received. If I go to South Chicago, I'm going to have a different reception than if I go to Northern Connecticut.
Yeah, that privilege will show up differently.
I totally get it, and I'm fine with having that conversation around what it means to be white without an affect to my dialect and how I show up and what heteronormativity does for me. But
then you show up in Martha's Vineyard coming from Roseburg, Oregon, and you're like, I have no privilege here. My skin doesn't do fuck all for me here.
Exactly. And I think that's the conversation that so many Americans have that is meaningful. And I appreciate that there's nuances to all this.
Yes, that's a lost word. Like we have to talk about this, and it's nuanced. It's all nuanced.
But the experience that people, I think I was watching a debate between, who was it? Was it Ben Shapiro and somebody who is a very left political activist, and they had a wonderful back and forth.
Oh yeah, those guys are like the two best debaters on the quote unquote other side of each other.
Yeah, probably.
But it ended up being good.
Oh man,
I never watched it. I just saw
it was well, they were both guests on Bill Maher.
That's what it was.
And he just let him go to it. And I'm gonna look up this guy's name, Bakari. As soon as I Google it, it's going to come up because he's having a moment. But he's a really well spoken guy.
And they had A productive conversation.
They had a productive conversation, but he brought in this he talked about how he was fleshing out what racism looks like in the modern age, and he was getting pushback from Ben Shapiro and from Bill Maher, and they were talking about how we have legacy racism, of course, but we have so much progress, and
Yes.
he talks about the way that the medical establishment responds to Black women's pain and how much more likely they are to die in childbirth than white women, and Ben Shapiro came back with like, well, socioeconomically they're in worse hospitals, they're in and he's like, same hospital. He's like, same hospital, same doctor, same maternity ward, same setup, and so factoring for socioeconomics, factoring for zip codes, factoring for those things. And he talks about people just respond to the pain of a Black person differently than they respond to the pain of a white person. And
it's the unconscious part, yeah, or conscious, sadly.
Sure, right. And
but we should be talking about this. It's right, not arguing about it, but like, let's get to the truth here, like the Stoics would say. What's the truth?
Bakari Sellers is the guy's name, and he did a really good job of teasing apart these ideas, and he got good, thoughtful questions from his fellow panelists. And then it led to greater discovery.
That's exactly what we need to be doing. Imagine if those two like just decide to do a podcast, like Breaking Points. It's like, that'd be great.
Well, if they didn't kill each other.
Yeah, if they decided to, the point is not to debate, but have discourse. Like if there's this fundamental change, like we don't know the answers, let's have the discourse. That's what discourse means. Like we don't know the end, but we're going to talk it through, and then maybe we'll come to a decision. Debate's like, I have to win.
That's correct.
That's not working anymore.
Well, it's debate is like WWF, and discourse is the Discovery Channel.
I love it. Yes, that's a good one.
And Bill Maher had a great quote that I like. He's talking about being blind to the problem, because. Bakari, and it's a line of questioning that is not without merit. He's saying like you shouldn't talk about the Black experience if you don't know what it's about, and they're having that came up in the discussion, and Bill Maher was he came back with, well, there's two ways to be blind to a problem. There's to be too distant, like I am, and there's to be too close.
Yep.
And neither of which is helpful, right? There's the middle road.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just like they stayed in the frame of the argument the whole time, even though they were disagreeing, and they were enhancing the clarity, right? Versus, ad hominem or any sort of fallacies.
They refrained from the ad hominem.
No,
or did they go there?
No.
Great. Good.
Yeah.
No personal attacks.
There was nobody was trying to make someone sound stupid. No one was trying to invalidate data. No one was trying to.
I hate that crap, man.
And it's a waste of time. And also, when people get threatened by these conversations, they miss out on all the things that they might have learned. My cousin, Matthew, was a lieutenant colonel in the United States Air Force, and he was the inspector general for an area of operations in Europe for the Air Force, and they wanted to the Air Force Command. I don't know what the wing, or I don't know what the terms are in the Air Force. Doesn't matter to me. It's all
what wing there.
Yeah, it's all Space Command. If you're not in the Army, it's all Starfleet.
It's all Starfleet. Yes.
So.
Still one of the best movies.
And so Matt is definitely right. Religious right.
Mm-hmm.
And the orders were to identify the airmen that didn't want to receive the vaccine and figure out how to chapter them out of the Air Force. And that's where the conversation was going. And he said no, and said, "Well, turn in your resignation." So he did, and then they rethought their position. And his argument wasn't scientific. It was a DEI argument. He's like, if we're trying to include people, and these people have just regular questions about a vaccine, they want to serve their country.
Mhm.
How are we being inclusive if we exile 11% of our
Mhm.
Air Force when we don't have the talent, or we're already challenged
Mhm.
to launch the planes that we're launching now?
Bingo. You want diversity of thought, not yes men. That's freaking dangerous.
Yeah. So he held the line, and he used the lines of inquiry that they were already using. Like he met them where he met the command where they were at, and did he move the needle? Who knows? But the Air Force never had a final suspense date on the vaccine, so they never had to lay anybody off or jettison them from the Air Force.
Like the other branches had problems with, which they've retracted now.
Of course. But the important thing in wherever you are is in these dialogues is to stay in the conversation, and to not just have a cogent argument, which you should, but also to listen. Because
Yes.
Because my favorite part of a good debate is, oh, yeah, you're probably right.
Brilliant. Yeah. When have you ever heard that in a debate?
I hear them all the time because I only have a few channels of inquiry that I only follow a few people on YouTube.
So they're less debating and more just discussing?
Yeah, people want to find the right answers.
That's the truth. Yeah,
they're agnostic.
Yes.
So they're not ideologues.
You're not married to your identity.
It doesn't have to fit with a narrative.
That's the danger, yeah.
Because most things don't fit nicely with a narrative. Storytelling has to be, you have to expand the story. If you want to be a good storyteller, you have to be inclusive. You have to expand the breadth of the story to fit in all the characters and all the points of view. But most people have a narrow bandwidth of what they have, what they'll tolerate. And unfortunately, that means that you've already pre-decided who can be in your story.
Yep.
Which was going to throw us back into the conversation that we were actually started about 30 minutes ago.
We didn't even talk about what you're listening to.
I'm listening to Tiger Army, Forever Fades Away. It's a westerny rockabilly sound. It's really fun.
We'll have to check it.
It's really simple. And but that conversation that we just had about who's good and bad, who is acceptable to listen to, what ideas you'll tolerate, that feeds into our conversation today around agency and learned helplessness. And the whole part, the reason why we started this conversation around hope was because of this epidemic of hopelessness and this feeling that we don't have any influence and control of how our lives turn out. And as we've dissected goal setting and pathways, agency is the thing. People have goals. When I was 14, I wanted to, my goal was to make out with a 15-year-old. I think
sounds about right. Yeah.
Goals are based on what makes you feel good and what makes you feel bad. Get further away from pain, closer to pleasure. Pathways, how to do that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today because we talked about it last episode, but a lot of our agency problems, so how much control we feel of our own lives, has a lot to do with what pathways what actions we perceive we can take to get somewhere, and then what results that creates. And we get to this learned helplessness, which is learned helplessness is a kind of a clinical term.
Yeah.
What's the definition of learned helplessness?
I don't know. The academic-y version is basically learning that you have no agency. You can't do it no matter what you do. And you almost need someone else to do it for you. Like you grew up in a house where your needs were never met. Either somebody did everything for you or nobody showed up at all and you just kind of gave up or thought someone will always just do it. And so I don't have to do it. And then you get out in the real world and it's like, nope. You've learned to be helpless. And that's hard to break out of once you get there.
So learn helplessness, I like that. Learn helplessness is, I think it's context dependent, but it's the sense that your actions don't matter.
Yep.
And you're unable to create the result that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So in the book Mind Magic, James Doty, this neurosurgeon, talks about agency and how easy it is to lose. And he acknowledges that agency isn't just about the actions you take and the results that they produce. It's also about how you feel about it, meaning how you anticipate, how you perceive, you pre-imagine what you're about to do, and how much effort that you put into the action. And he points out this patient in the book who has a paralyzed arm, and she can't move. The arm has no neurological signal. So like you jam a little, electronic device in there. There's no signal going to her hand.
Was that like a head trauma or something?
Mm-hmm. Head, neck trauma. So, but she doesn't know that. And so they're interviewing her and they're like, okay, well, if you don't have any pathology, then go ahead and just wiggle make a fist with your left arm. And she's like, oh, I can do that. And then she like grunts and like looks at her hand and says, see, I did it. And they're like,
wait a second.
And you laugh hearing that story, but she was dead serious. And she imagined it.
Your beliefs are strong.
She imagined it and she efforted.
Mm-hmm. Efforted. I like that. Yeah.
Nothing happened. So there was no action or result, but it doesn't matter because her perception made up for it.
Bingo. The brain will fill in the gaps. Yeah. For better or worse. For
a small action like making a fist.
Yeah, yeah.
So to some degree, your anticipation and your effort are the anticipation, so your ability to preview your efforts and results, and your level of effort, which means how much discomfort you tolerated in the service of the action. This is a tricky one because, as we're about to see, you can have a high level of effort and a high level of discomfort and have actually taken no action, right? In the way we just described that paralyzed woman. But a lot of times, people, I'm going to use some health metaphors, health analogies here because I work with people who change their diet and exercise every day. Well, people can have a very high level of discomfort for no action. So the worry that they have and the stress and the anxiety that they have over their nutrition or their physical activity, that counts as effort to them, right? And so if you're listening to this, and this may be you, but certainly this is me in different areas of my life as well, is there is a level of anxiety that just preparing to take an action gives you.
Right.
So I've already anticipated and I'm undergoing effort. Psychological effort in this case, right? Whereas I think to be like completely clinical about it, your effort is the level of discomfort or pain that you have undergone in service of that activity. So to stick with the fitness analogy, heart rate. All right. So if you're doing cardiovascular training and your heart rate's at 60, that's low effort. 120, medium. 160, high. Right.
180, go to the hospital. Maybe.
Well, you could touch it. You could touch it.
We were probably there at Mount Adams, by the way.
That's right. So effort rate is how much discomfort you're actually physiologically dealing with in service of that goal. So if you're strength training, your effort's going to be medium, low, and high all in the same workout. But people will have just perceived anxiety will take the place of effort in a lot of times.
Perceived anxiety will take the place of effort in their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've already done a whole lot in my head.
That's correct.
I've used cognitive brain power. I feel tired now.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the action, so then further down the chain, you've got anticipation, effort, action. Action is what did you actually physically move? What force did you overcome? Some actions like sending an email can be high or low discomfort. Sending an email might seem simple. Type. If that email is your resignation, that's a very high level of intensity for that action, right? But you're overcoming external force. And so I would tie this to a lot of people think that just the way that we've said this, a lot of people think that they're taking action And what they're doing is they're really just enduring a lot of psychological stress. And
Yeah, what a slippery one, right?
they're the psychological stress is avoiding the real emotional discomfort
Bingo.
of taking action.
It's the wrapping paper.
And then the results. So between the actions, the difference between effort and action is actions produce results. And then another threat to and this is, we're about to get into what are the problems, but results are immediate. I got sweaty. Medium term, I lost a pound. Long term, my cholesterol went down, my calcium score stabilized, and my risk for heart disease decreased.
And it's some muscle, and I look good in the mirror.
But but those immediate, medium term, and long term actions, those are much different, because the result for a workout is really just immediate term pain.
Yep.
The medium term results from a workout are feeling a little bit better and feeling good, but that takes time to develop. Yeah. And the long term results you almost never really see until you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, and you're being measured. Your blood pressure is getting measured. Your weight's getting measured.
Oh, we're talking about that stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, those are the long-term results, right? Longevity is.
Oh, you mean if you've been consistently doing this practice? Yeah. Yeah, it's easier when you're 20 because somebody's going to do shit and you look the same. And then you hit 40 and you're like, bam. Nope.
But long-term results by definition, you don't see very, very easily. And people because they can't see them, they think they're not getting there and they don't matter, or that their result, their all of their efforting isn't creating the result that they want.
A final product, yeah.
Yeah. And so like as I'm going through my own physical transformation, it took me about 6 months of effort to drop about 20 pounds. And immediately I didn't really see any results, right? I just felt effort. And then in the medium term, I started to feel a lot better. And in the long term, we're still not in the long term. I'm beginning to see what long-term results look like. But I've been in the fitness game for a long time. So
this process.
Yeah, I understand. But also they're emergent, right? Because a long-term result is like having much better sleep. And then the long-term result of that is mental health.
Yeah.
Right?
All kinds of stuff from good sleep.
So it's not just what you see, it's what you don't see. So if you're really good with finances at the beginning of your financial, independence, your quality of life decreases, right? You're going out less,
saving, investing.
You're grocery shopping in different places.
Budgets, yeah.
So your life kind of sucks for the first 5 or 10 years.
A little boring, yeah.
And then in the medium term, you have more freedom. I don't have any debt. I can make different decisions. I don't need this job.
I can go on vacation.
I can go, I can take time off. I can go to work at a place that treats me better for $10,000 a year less. And that's fine with me. And then the long-term consequences of that, right? Because you get to have a nicer work environment, you actually work more productive.
Better relationships, better mental health.
So a lot of the agency problems are that how we define work, the work, right? If most people define it as effort versus the action and the results, right?
It's an interesting distinction, yeah.
And because even if you take correct action, the payoff isn't immediate. In fact, the burden becomes immediate. Mm-hmm. Over the long term, you start to get in this place of like, oh, I can't take action to make my life better in the health realm, right? Let's stick with that.
Because the burden is too much.
Because the burden is too much.
Perceived burden.
And here's when I see this all the time. My results don't meet my expectations. For the effort that I'm putting in, all this pain, I am only down 5 pounds.
God damn, I hate that word expectation. If we could just delete it from our vocabulary, because when you have an expectation of something, it feels like 10 out of 10 times you're doomed to be disappointed. Because in your mind's eye, whatever that is, it's never going to pan out 100% the same. I hate that in the corporate world. The expectation is we'll have blah, blah, blah. Like, how about the goal? How about like, this is what we're trying to do. But when it's like a black and white, hard expectation, I think we just hose ourselves. I really don't like that word. So I'm glad you brought it in.
Well, the next book on my list is The Expectation Effect.
Have they written about this?
Mm-hmm. And it's it's an interesting concept, and it's been tossed around a lot in the circles I enjoy. So I'm going to read it. But
maybe it destroys my argument. I don't know.
Well, there's a piece of expectations that is in your argument that is the painful part. And this is attachment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think expectations are powerful. They shape the actions that you take. However, the attachment to what that looks like and when is the painful part.
When it has to be exactly as your mind's eye saw it in the beginning or whatever.
Or it's a pathway expectation.
Yeah.
It's like I was creating some business goals and I was writing them down. I was talking to my therapist and I was like, my goal is to be completely detached from how, but continue to be committed to the goal and the what.
The why. Yeah.
And so I want to, buy this building and I want to create some, fun businesses inside of them. And I have a path in my mind about how that can occur. And I also am detached. So if I win the lottery and someone gives me $4 million, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not, it doesn't have to be hard. I'm not attached to it being difficult.
Right. Yeah.
But having a nuts and bolts build the ladder approach to it is important. Yeah. And if someone comes along and gives me half the ladder, or like, oh, hey, I know this guy, he owns a construction company, does stuff like that. Cool. Great. Mm-hmm. Cool. Give me 6 of the rungs right now. I'm ready for it.
So the expectation is to have a goal. If you put it that way.
Well, the expectations, the clarity of the goal and the attachment to them is the painful part.
Yeah.
And that is what is it? What everything about the how, the pathway, and being very much insecure about what it says about you that it occurs that way.
I can see the sunken cost fallacy playing in here too, where you just keep doubling down. Like, well, I've already put 50 grand into this thing. I got to just put 50 grand more in and lose down 100 grand.
Yeah. And I recently severed a relationship where I gave this person a couple $1,000s and there was still more to do, but it was just uncomfortable. I didn't like the process. And I also knew that the work I really needed to do, I just really needed to do. And so I just saved myself a bunch of time and cut my losses. And it's something that like people get caught up in the shoulds. Well, they should give you a refund and this person and you should get, it should be easier. And it's like, what's the straightest line? Value your time and energy and just like move to that. And the idea, I think there's an entitlement that comes with like there's an entitlement comes with abdicating responsibility for the goal. It's like, it's not this person's responsibility to make sure that my vision comes into reality. It's mine. Yep. And as soon as I sense a deviation from the vision, then have that conversation.
Yeah.
And anyways, we're getting off track of the results do not meet expectations, but people, when they work really hard at fitness, they put a lot of workouts in and they don't see the 8-pack in the mirror or the whatever the result is. Then what they think is that the dots are connecting is all the effort that I'm putting in isn't paying off. Well, not the way you're measuring it.
Correct.
Right. And the discomfort level is too high for their preferences. And that's an interesting one because the thing I do, the way my approach to health is, I'm going to make a change and I'm never going to not do it. I'm going to take creatine. I'm never not taking creatine. I'm going to go to bed early. I'm just always going to go to bed at the same time now.
Yeah.
And I say that and people think like, oh, that's too rigorous. Like, no, if the problem I'm solving for is feeling good, I want to feel the best.
And once you start feeling it, you'll want that creatine. You'll want that sleep. There's your buy-in.
Right. And so when people talk about like, this is too much effort, the thing I'm thinking is like, don't you feel the extra energy? Don't you feel the, the freedom? And that what they're not paying attention to the opportunity, they're paying attention to the obligation. And so they see like, well, I can't go out to eat. I was like, you can go out to eat. I go out to eat all the time. You just can't eat like an asshole.
Yeah, you can't do that every day.
You just can't have a margarita and 5 tacos. Which by the way is a great way to spend an afternoon. However, that's not
once a month.
That's not the norm for you, right? Yeah. Like they call it binging, but but the new norm is creating the health that you want.
Mhm.
So people erode their own agency when they connect when they connect the dots that their actions don't matter and they're not producing the outcomes that they want.
Yes.
Because they are. It's just there's still an attachment to an old comfort,
Mhm.
and that we have to find new comforts, and that's okay. But we'll get there, because I want to get to this thing that you pointed out about what where this all comes from. And but I think the another part of this is that the actions that you have to take are not fun or rewarding immediately or reinforced. In fact, sometimes the actions you take, and this is especially true in your 20s, right, when people are figuring out where they're going to end up, is when you start to distance yourself from the happy hours and the killing time with friends.
Xbox.
You're actually punished because you lose your social connectivity and fabric.
Totally. You're in the out group now.
And even if you're not directly ostracized, you're indirectly ostracized because you don't get to do all the fun things that your friends are doing.
Mm-hmm. That's how you find a new in group.
That's right.
Who are doing the things they're doing.
Yeah, I one of the seminal moments of my 30s, or late 20s, early 30s, was getting exiled from my friend group, which was painful in the moment, and so healing.
Is that when you went off to boot camp or after?
Oh no, this is when I was in college. I had just graduated from college and was just started a personal training business. And I remember living in this like really dingy apartment, and my friends would come over and we'd just sit around in my living room and I would pour them drinks, and we would just bullshit until midnight or whatever, which is fun and fun. But we'd do that
Every night,
a couple times a week.
mm-hmm.
And as time wore on, I was using that as like a safety net, as a safe haven from having to take risk and do the things that I knew I needed to do to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I would run my ideas of change by my friends, and they would sometimes support me or sometimes not, verbally, but the behaviors that was keeping me stuck were staying. And it wasn't until I had a schism from that group that I got the opportunity to detox. And it was, they were toxic relationships, not because the people were bad, but because of the way that I was using those relationships. The dynamic wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those moments where I was very grateful. I'm very grateful to this day for something I didn't ask for. And most of my life has been that way. The things I didn't ask for were exactly what I needed.
Yeah, there's a truth of that in life. It's just painful, but when you look back, it's like, oh, that did help me. Sucks. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
So we've talked about
barriers to agency and learned helplessness, what it means, basically the disconnection between your sense of your behavior affecting your outcomes, your results.
mm-hmm.
And you were saying that below that, right, we talked about underneath that is lack of clarity, or on the usefulness because of all those things, the delayed payoff, the discomfort level being high versus the immediate payoff,
the cultural beliefs you've been told, the family system beliefs you've been told. We have layers upon layers here.
And so this is something that I think is it's going to be clear to some listeners, and some listeners, if you're wealthy and your friend group is not wealthy, that there is already a separation from your experience of how they engage with the world and how you engage with the world. Tony Robbins talks about this in his book.
Which one?
Awaken the Giant Within. Mm-hmm. He talks about, wanting to take his friends on an adventure trip to mm-hmm. Egypt. He's like, I just finished this circuit with Jim Rohn. I've got some money in my pocket. I want to go check out the pyramids and go ride camels in the desert. And he's like, hey guys, I'll pay for your plane tickets. Like, let's go to Cairo. And they came back and they're like, oh, Mr. Moneybags, now we're you want to travel the world. Well, we got to work, and he was like shocked that they weren't excited to go on an adventure. And it points out that this problem of sometimes your success is viewed as a betrayal to your family unit, your in-group.
1,000%. And people like the crabs in the bucket will sometimes try to pull you back, because then it forces them to have to check themselves. I'm like, oh, am I progressing in life? Could I actually go for what I want to do in life? I have some needs and goals, but I'm scared of them. And well, you can't do it. Come back. Get back to the family system. You got to stay stuck. There's a homeostasis that's formed. That there's a family homeostasis, and then there's your own homeostasis. And the mind hates changing that. It's painful. But once you bust out of that and you have a new version, that's the new homeostasis. And then it's actually protective in a good way. But getting out of there is hard. And we'll get to the reasons why.
Well, and this is where I use the terminology or the phraseology of you have to let a part of you die. And when I said that, I was specifically thinking about the part of me that felt connected to, my parents. So I'll use my mom as an example. She doesn't, and I don't know if she knows how my world works or, what I do for a living or anything like that.
Still?
Oh yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, it's been that way for a while. She kind of loosely understood, I owned a gym, and she just, she thought I worked too much, thought I was a workaholic or whatever. And there was some truth to that, but
so there's some family homeostasis right there.
But she had to do something. She, at this point, I've been in the army. I've put myself through college. I failed at a couple businesses, and she had to do something. She had to miss out on, I think, a trip with her sister, or doing something that she was in the hospital for some episode that she was going through. And I said, well, it's understandable that you didn't get to, that you're upset that you couldn't go on this trip that you wanted to go on to with your sister, but you don't always get to do the things that you want to do in life. And she said, how the fuck would you know? You've always done what you wanted to do.
You just have to, you got to just hold that and like, that's not my stuff.
And I just laughed. And I laughed because from her perspective, that's absolutely true.
Correct. Yeah. She's not seeing the pain you've gone through.
But I was always willing to do whatever it took to change the circumstance.
You didn't want to be like her.
Or be in it like anybody I grew up with. Mm-hmm. And that, when I say you have to let a part of yourself die, is the part of me that was attached to how my mom felt about me. They need to be like her, or be liked by her, or be understood by, all those things had to go. And because the parts that that I was connected with her were not helping me. And I love my mom. So if you're reading this, like, we're in a good place. I'll send her a text as soon as I'm done with this pod, because I think about her often.
Of course, it's Connor's wife, Vienna, said in one of our trainings, so you can't honor your story and protect your parents at the same time. When you're trying to really honor your story, you can love your parents still, but you can't. There's the nuance here. Like, yes, I still love them, but yes, they failed me, and yes, I was hurt. You can't say, oh, well, compared to other people, it wasn't so bad, and they did the best they could. Well, yeah, those are truths, but you still hurt, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was hard, right? Yeah. You have to honor your story.
And that's the part too, that feels like a betrayal, right? If you're,
correct.
If you're new to doing this work, as I consider myself, only in I'm 40, and only in the last 18 months have I been able to stay in the conversation and acknowledge that I was abused as a child for a variety of in a variety of circumstances.
Body keeps the score. Kind of helped you with that one, didn't it?
Yeah. And the Body Keeps the Score was one of the bigger illuminators to how your trauma changes the brain. And before that, I just viewed as a betrayal. Like and it was also like I was blaming my parents, and like there was some sort of intentionality. Like for some reason, conflating the intentionality with abuse.
Right. Yeah. Like is personal to you. They're trying to mess you up. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan Holiday is a author, but he also has a newsletter and a channel for dads.
Daily Dad. Yeah.
Daily
Dad. Great. And a book. It's phenomenal.
He talks about how he gets pushback, and he talks about acknowledging how your kids are affected by your personality quirks. And his being ironclad about schedule and commitments and things, and then realizing that his kids didn't sign up for any of that, and that his taking them on a ride a lot of the times, and acknowledging that, and the amount of people that talk about, they push back on him for being kind to his kids and like letting them off the hook for his commitments. And people are like, well, you're going to train him to be weak. And he's just like, I had to turn off the comments. It's like, how is this helping your kids? It's not.
No, it's counterintuitive, but it's not. There's again, a nuance to that.
No, you could be a good example to your kids. Be in shape, take care of yourself, be nice to your partner, have a safe home, all those things. But putting your kids through what you're going through is a boundary violation.
100%.
Yeah. And that's and just like, it's a boundary violation. It's not intentional. I don't think people are out there making their kids' lives harder for a reason.
No, be careful though, because then you're in the realm of the parentified child.
Yeah.
Like they really don't like conflict. I hated it when I saw my parents fight, and it fucked me up. And then the other day, like my wife and I were just like having like a disagreement. It wasn't even a fight. And my youngest daughter was like, be nice, pointing to me. And I was like, oh shit. Was my voice a little louder than my wife's? Because she was just as it wasn't really heated, but something about me. Like she came up to me and said, be nice. And I was like, okay, breathe. Yep. I shouldn't be doing this. And I was like, you're right. Daddy will be nice. Yes. And she was fine. And she walked away. But they don't like that. They want to feel safe in their environment. If not, they will try to do it. And then that's when we start to trade authenticity for attachment to our parents. We stop developing our authentic selves, and we go, okay, I have to unfuck this parental scenario. So make sure you guys feel good so I can feel good. And if the parents don't do that, kids will keep trying to do that. That's what I did growing up.
Thread the needle for me. So in that conversation, you were talking about, that's when kids trade authenticity for
developing their authentic self. Your parents are supposed to help you do that.
So how in that conversation does it go wrong where you interrupt that?
When kids are trying to develop an authentic self?
No, take it back to that exact scenario.
With my daughter?
Yeah.
Okay. If I ignored her, if I blew up even more at my wife, if I told her it's not your business or whatever, or like, well, what do you think I should do? Like that's a terrible one. My mom probably did that to me quite a bit. I'm 8. I'm just barely out of diapers, basically. You want me to balance a checkbook? Like what?
So the conflict, the escalation of conflict, interrupts the kids'
authentic self-development,
because they then are coping with an unstable environment.
Yes, they will trade. A child will rather be punched in the face than left in the forest to die, because there's still connection attachment. So they want to stay attached to their caregivers to feel safe, like they're not going to be dead. So they'll do whatever. I have to be the Frenchified child. I have to give to get. I have to be codependent. I have to silence myself. I have to turn myself down. I can't be so loud. I have to do those weird behaviors to stay connected to you, to get your attention in any motherfucking way. check, I'll do that. And I've shut down asking, who am I? What do I want? What am I about? What is my emotion? Your parents are supposed to see that and go, oh, you're upset. Let me soothe you. Are you angry? And you have this thing in your chest that's burning. Like, oh, that's that burn, that feel. It's angry. Interesting. You start developing a sense of self.
So by acknowledging what your daughter is saying to you.
Yeah, I see you. You have feelings. I believe you. Yes, what your feelings you're having are valid, and you have a point. And I'm acknowledging that your existence is real, and I'm listening to you. And you can stop worrying about me and keep asking who you are and what you want. And I know you like ice cream, and I know you hate that, and I know you fight with your sister, and it's all good.
So, the reason why I'm spending so much time here is because I think that a lot of people have the experience of the that moment where the child is sensing conflict and then voices a concern. All you have to do to erode that child's sense of self is to steamroll them, because you can. They're 8.
You can roll them over.
And if you scream at them, GTF out of the room, they will.
They will.
And you forever created a wound.
Yep.
And potentially you can go back that same day.
You should, and you can repair.
And you can repair that. But in my experience, that's just the dynamic of interrupting a parent, a parental disagreement. And it doesn't seem like anything, when you're the kid, it doesn't seem, well, first of all, it seems normal if that's your normal experience.
Totally. Yeah.
But the little T and big T traumas that come from that experience, their ripples make waves.
Mm-hmm.
And it very much infects. I'm going to use the word infects. It very much infects the way the kid perceives themselves and their reality.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it gets distorted.
I had and then this goes back to the disconnect between hard work and identity and all these things. Is I had trigger warning. I had bad grades in high school, and the teachers were very aware of my potential, and they cared a lot, and they were engaged. And they would say things to me like, "What about your pride? Like, aren't you dissatisfied with this outcome of
Just so typical
of the GPA?" Oh, go ahead.
They don't realize, like, bro, I don't know what pride is. Parents never told me about what pride is. Never developed in me. I don't even know what that fucking means. Maybe on some intellectual level, but
yeah. And I think, like, if you have some semblance of normal activity in your life, or normal structural engagement, you might know what that had meant. I didn't have a reference point for that, to your point. And like my response, like, proud of what? Yeah. And it wasn't ironic. I wasn't being a cynical.
No.
I mean, I was a cynical, sardonic kid, but
not in that moment.
Not in that moment. I was curious. I was like,
yeah.
What are you talking about, pride? And they're like, well, this is a reflection of your academic ability or something, some abstract.
It's on your permanent record.
And I was just like, none of those things have any impact on my life. And I would go from that conversation to, to studying for algebra in my kitchen, where I also slept, and all of the adults in the house smoked, and I would have to get in a fist fight to finish with my soon to be second stepfather to finish my studies.
Jesus.
And this is where, like, that question about hard work has no bearing in that. We have failed structure.
Bingo.
And it's like, you're talking to a 16-year-old who's trying to hold down a job, feed himself and his family, and for some reason choke out one of the adults that shouldn't even be in the fucking house. So the conversation is so many degrees off of why do you have a C in algebra? It's like you're asking way the wrong question.
That guy needs to check his privilege.
And I'm not alone in this experience, right? There's
No.
there's a not the majority. I think at least half to 60% of people come from somewhat normal houses. So this is a minority, but it is tens of millions of people.
It's quite a few freaking people
have this experience that I'm sharing. And the identity and beliefs that you're talking about that impacted this attachment wounds,
where they come from
these conversations. And the level of agency that you have that you experience for yourself in your life in that moment is quite low.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be difficult to repair, but given these simple barriers, if I change, I'm betraying my family, I don't want to be disconnected from the people who love me.
Exile again, both prioritize attachment over authenticity, prioritize attachment over abandonment. So there you go. Great. We got to choke out the stepdad to stay attached. All right, bring it on. But that's it. You'd rather have that than you need to go live in the forest now by yourself. Yeah. And which we end up choosing probably, like you said, F you guys, and went off to paratrooper school.
Oh no, I left that day. Actually, I was later that day. I was like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
But the rules, right? These conversations create rules of how you show up in the world. So in my mind, do not level a complaint at an adult unless you can fight them. Because my complaint that started that fight was stop smoking in the house.
Which is a reasonable request for most reasonable people.
why we're smoking in the house in general? Like we're so far off track.
Way off.
We're way off track. If the 16-year-old is like, "Hey, I don't think we should be doing this,"
this is not a good idea,
and it triggers a fist fight.
God.
But the rules that I had. So think about the unwinding that must occur in someone's life if you try to interrupt a domestic violence dispute and you get steamrolled. If you complain to an adult and they fight you, if you are responsible for all of the problems that you are aware of, like, right?
That's heavy. I feel that one.
And we, through our experiences as kids and unconsciously as adults, like Miles is just sharing about this argument with his wife, or this conflict that's normal and healthy to have, and it's so easy to create these wounds. And you don't have to be, a deranged, unemployed redneck to wound, a young child.
No,
you can do it as a thoughtful and passionate mom or dad.
And if your child is sensitive or like wired to be sensitive, it's really easy to do it.
Yes.
I mean, that was my experience. A lot of people with ADD or on the neurodivergence spectrum are very sensitive, and so attachment wounds hit them like twice as hard. And it doesn't. That's why you grow up and you're like, well, I wasn't that bad. Well, I was pretty sensitive, so it was that bad. And then as you do a deeper dive and you stop comparing yourself to other trauma for other people, are like, yeah, that was pretty bad. That really hurt. And honoring that pain, that's going down the path of healing.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad that you shared that, because I think that sometimes veterans do this to each other all the time about like, well, you didn't really serve in Iraq because you weren't in first AD. All right.
Yeah. Never left the wire.
You weren't in first AD Bravo company. You weren't in my platoon. You weren't me, is what they're saying.
But I was in first ID. So what's more baller?
But it's like the trauma Olympics. What
exactly?
It's difficult for any human, and from my perspective, it's difficult for me to admit that I was wounded, because the people that wounded me were also the people that I loved. And I thought that one would preclude the other.
Yep.
I call it the hedgehog effect.
That's a good one.
And hedgehogs too close together poke each other, but if they get too far apart, they can't work together, and die alone in the forest. So you're gonna be poked by the people around you, and the key is to repair and acknowledge as quickly as you can, and not contribute to the problems. But you have to be evolved to have these conversations.
Yep. Yeah. And so when you said I need to kill off that part of myself, that's where I was like, coming from an IFS lens, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't know if you really mean like delete that part of yourself. I think you meant mature it, heal it, grow it, that kind of thing. Is that what you meant?
Well, so to change and to grow, you have to violate the norms
Of the family system.
that you currently have,
wherever you're at. Yeah.
So
whatever's blocking you. Yeah.
So you're going to have to do something different. And when I say let a part of you die, the part of me that needs to feel connected to my past, or that part was dysfunctional, and it wasn't caused by me. It was a response to the environment. And I used to be very attached to how other people felt about me. And so when I say let something die, it is what got you there won't get you here. And you have to be okay with no longer being the person. It's like you're talking about parent role reversal, right? Parenting your parents.
Parentified child. Yeah.
And I, until recently, I didn't understand that was a toxic relationship, and that I was still contributing to it.
The codependency.
Still parenting. And that was a choice that I was actively making. And then when I stopped making that choice, I got energy back, and a part of my relationship died.
Okay, I see what you're saying. The relationship aspect, dynamic died, but that part of you didn't try to murder off. Yeah.
No, the little boy who loves his mom and doesn't want to see her homeless or hurt.
Why would we kill that part of you?
No,
makes no sense. But I think as men, we're taught to like kill it off, destroy it, run away from it, ignore it. These emotions, fuck that. Like, well, you can do that for a certain amount of time, but like that stuff goes to the shadows and starts doing push-ups and comes back later and bites you in the ass. So we can't delete parts of ourselves, but we can only grow them and heal them.
What's necessary and uncomfortable is to grieve that little boy.
Yes.
Who
was hurt
and scared, and to compensate and to calm down the situation became the person that he thought he needed to be.
Totally.
That is the grief. And it's more of, to what you said, it's more honoring that than disowning.
Yeah. And that little guy can stop doing that work so hard and maybe does something else. You know, Connor says you repurpose them as loyal soldiers, you know, give them new orders. Like, oh, bro, you don't have to do that job anymore. Now, maybe you want to do this, or how about you do that? Now you're my biggest supporter, or you're my cheerleader, or whatever. You know, it can release that duty. And you said you got a burst of energy. You know that's happened when you feel that burst of energy. You know you're doing that work when you feel that energy release, because that part has stopped doing that work that was so heavy and draining and all that energy. So something happened with that part with you. If you felt that energy release, that's a good sign.
Yeah, it was in the moment. It was a survival. A mechanism was like committed to a project that I needed to see through. And when you do that, when you try to, embrace your dharma and shed some of those roles, it's like the universe comes to test you with a bunch of emergencies that the old me would have been like, oh, I have to see to this.
It's so fascinating. Yeah.
And then just saying, no, that's not mine anymore. I then had the energy to continue to move forward. And there was a grieving period. It was like a hangover.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grieved but I felt an immediate shift, and everything got easier.
Yeah. There's a little transitional space that's uncomfortable. That's going to the new homeostasis. And take a quick pause, 1 sec, folks. All right, pee break is over. We are back. And what question you just asked me?
So the question is, we just talked about actions and results, and your agency, your whether or not you have learned helplessness, and below that is your identity and beliefs, and below that is your attachment wound. So then I asked, walk me through how the attachment wound shows up, and impacts your identity and beliefs, which impact your the actions you're willing to take.
Yes. And this can go in a myriad different ways with attachment, but I'll try to use one example. So we're going from the bottom to the top. So you've just identified the top layer, which is called the wrapping paper. A lot of people come into therapy with the wrapping paper. I have this bad belief, or I just can't seem to do this. I have these roadblocks. I want to get this done in the gym, but I just can't. That's the wrapping paper. That's what's in the gift is where we're getting at the roots of it. So if we think of attachment, we can also bring in Carl Jung's work of the shadow, which is basically everything you repress, which means an unconscious pushing down, to suppress, to consciously, I'm putting that over there and don't want to think about it, don't want to feel it. And when we're kids, we by and large do a lot of repressing because that's survival. Our nervous system's just developing. We don't have words yet. If we've experienced trauma, it's going to that area. When we get older, it's a little bit like, oh, I don't want to feel that. Let me go ahead and just ignore it or numb it out with something or blah, blah, blah. And those things come back to bite us later. So an attachment wound, like when I talked about, there's an interruption in remaining attached to a parent where we'll trade attachment over developing an authentic self. If we don't know who we are, what are we about, what do we want, who am I? I feel like I'm worthy as a human on the earth no matter what. That's an authentic self developing, and that's great. You feel like your parents got your back. Like if you need some support, you can go get some love, but they'll say, and you can go back out and do it. You need those two key things. That's secure based attachment. We hope for that. If we don't, your needs either got flat out ignored, manipulated, or told they were wrong, or somehow you interpreted, oh, my needs must be so big that they push people away. I must be too much. I better turn myself down. Like mom and dad are fighting. I try to get in the way and they just push me away. Or even littler, like I have a poopy diaper or I'm hungry and I've been crying in my crib for half an hour to an hour and nobody's coming. And this happens day in and day out. Your brain starts wiring like no one helps. I need to stay attached somehow. So I'll cry harder. And that's when it gets to the point where you get this sort of rage harder or just collapse inward sort of thing that Dewey Freeman talks about. That carries on later into life. And you see adult men, like either they're ragers, Marlboro men, or they're collapsers, New Age wimps. Like it still shows up in your adult life. And so you're trying to get your needs met from in utero to 20 or how long you stay in the house these days. And if your parents, the bar is really low. Someone said it was like 40% of just attuning to your kid will get the job done for attachment. It's really pathetic if you miss that bar. 40%. Come on, man. So 40% doesn't happen. Your needs aren't being met. And you think, okay, I've got to be the parentified child in the house. I've got to calm mom's feelings down, or I've got to get my parents to stop fighting, or whatever it was. Or I had to stop having needs because when I asked for stuff, my parents were irritated at it. And so I thought, well, I guess I'm kind of a burden. I guess I'm too much. Let me just turn that authentic self way down. Let me start dimming that shit. Then we get a further complex, and then we start thinking, mostly unconscious, I must be pretty fucking bad inside. If my parents hit me, I must be really fucked up, because only people that get hit are really fucked, right? That's why corporal punishment's not a good idea. You get a complex, like I'm so bad that I am fucking hittable. And you start getting this really terrible, inauthentic sense of self, a basic badness, so to speak. But you still want to remain attached to your parents. So you take it. And you do these little games to stay attached to your parents. Authentic self has gone way into the shadows. And this is also where, the golden shadow is good, because that's where that motherfucker lives. Authentic self is in the shadows, but it's good. We need to reclaim it. That's what's called the golden shadow in Jungian terms, the good stuff that was been repressed, suppressed. We go back to Hades and reclaim that shit later. But first, we've got to release these attachment wounds, kind of like you did with your mom, thinking, I don't need to do the caretaking anymore. And you had this burst of energy. That was you going into the shadow saying, I need that back. Golden, felt a big release of energy. That's part of this work. But if you're not doing that yet, a lot of people walk around, they don't even realize this is going on. Like, why can't I achieve my goals? Why do I have all this resistance? Why can't I do X, Y, and Z? And they're trying to put it on like the external environments or families or beliefs and stuff. But deep down, it's from, you don't know who you are. You don't think you have agency because you've never been taught to have agency. You've never had an authentic self cultivated by your parents. They're supposed to say, oh, I love you because of all these great traits. And oh, you're having these big feels. Oh, this is anger. And let me talk you through what that means. And then you start building a sense of self that's good. And it's not so clean as that, of course, but that's the goal. But if that doesn't happen, then we have this complex that we're just kind of bad, kind of just fucked up inside. And then we start taking cues of the rest of the world. Like, okay, if mom told me who I had to be, then I need to find women that will tell me who I am and to tell me how to live my life. And if you're good, then I'm good, right? Because if mom was safe in the environment, then I felt safe. If she was stressed, I did not feel safe because she was stressed when dad was gone. Then I don't know where food's coming from. She ain't going to the store. I guess I'll somehow get a job and work at 10 or something. You know, kids go through this. You probably went through this. That's fucking terrifying, but kids will do it to feel safe in their environment. Authentic self is being way repressed. It goes way down there. And so if that's not worked with, we carry this into our adult lives, into our personal relationships, especially. The more intimate the relationship, the more likely your attachment system gets kicked up, especially romantic ones. Close friendships can do it, but your romantic ones will really kick it up. So you might unconsciously find a partner that's like the positive and negative traits of your caregiver, if you're not aware of it. And so now you're in a nice guy relationship and you're doing the happy wife, happy life bullshit. Like, as long as you're good, then I'm good. But I don't have any needs. Yeah, you do. But you never got told you did. So you really think you don't have any needs. It's what the other person needs. I need you to tell me who I am and how to feel, and I'm good. It's like being a chameleon all the time, you know, because you had to do that dance as a kid to remain attached to your parents rather than who am I? What do I want? It's the wrong order of operations. It should be, what do I think and feel? What do I want? Then I'll factor your part to play in this relationship. Not you tell me what you think, and then I'm good. And then it's codependency.
Well, there's two things that stand out to what you're saying that are really clear. If the parents do not manage their own needs, they become the needs of the child.
Bingo.
And when counselors and relationship therapists and people say that none of the couple is more important than the kids, what they mean is if you do not navigate your own needs, economic, emotional, whatever they are, then that is what your kid will take on because they're trying to protect the family unit and ergo themselves because they haven't individuated yet anyway.
The parents' unlived lives and undone work will be given to the children. Carl Jung had some quotes like that.
Competency is the coping mechanism for instability 100% of the time. Now, there can be extreme golden versions of that and extreme toxic versions of that, and America's awash in the toxic versions. But one of my favorite entrepreneurs of all time, Gary Vaynerchuk, he grew up with a family of Russian immigrants. They were traded for wheat from the Soviet Union in 1980, 78 or something like that. Or he was 6 when he immigrated. And they all lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. So the kids slept in the living room, the parents slept in the bedroom, and then eventually they moved into a place where the kids had a room. But it was very economically tenuous. He was growing up in New Jersey, and his dad worked 7 days a week for 40 years. Like, you know, that was just a given. You're just going to work hard. So, but they had defined roles, and he could see that economics was very important. And so he started working when he was young and just became, a top tier 10th of 1% level entrepreneur. And by the time he was like 14, he had $10,000 underneath his mattress because he knew they were a Russian immigrant family and he knew money was important. And because his parents had really good boundaries and unconditional love for him, you don't know anybody's life, so I'm not going to
Sure.
speculate on
Sure, there
Gary.
were some misses there.
I'm not going to speculate on his like quality of childhood, but he tells stories from it all the time. And one of the things that you never get the sense of was there wasn't clarity and love, especially from his mom. And so the driving force of their family was economic stability, and that became accentuated in the personality of Gary and his brother AJ. And it wasn't bad, but it was clear. And you can do these things in a variety of ways, and it doesn't mean that your household doesn't know stress, it doesn't know strife, it doesn't know instability, but it has unity, and cohesion, meaning that the parents don't blame each other or certainly don't blame the kids for the problems that they're experiencing, and they navigate on a path to meet, to stay together and to work together. And what I'm painting a picture of, the needs of the parents come first so that they don't become the needs of the kids, and your stuff will bleed onto them, and that's okay as long as you're not handing it to them,
not hemorrhaging it. Yeah.
You don't want to abdicate responsibility to the kids. And like I remember the first I'm laughing because it's bad. I just remember being a teenager and my mom borrowing money from me so she could get something she needed. And she was like, I'll pay you back on Friday. And I was like,
borrowing, quote unquote.
I was like, it's okay. And I laughed because we were both playing our roles, right? Like I was the parent and I had responsibility, and she loved me, but didn't know how to be responsible. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. She just didn't know what it meant to be emotionally independent or financially independent or whatever.
She had her wounds visited upon her by her parents.
Correct. Yeah. And so you can have struggle as a family and it not be the defining characteristic of it, as long as you stay engaged and you stay empowered. And yeah. And so it's very easy to steamroll your kids and create these attachment wounds. It's also, to your point, 40% attunement. It's easy to do. It's easy not to do. And I don't want to paint anybody with a broad brush. If your parents were in such a mentally unstable place that they couldn't attune to you, doesn't mean they're bad people.
Just hurting.
Yeah, exactly. Just hurting. I have infinite empathy for both of my parents, and I love them very dearly. So the when we say it's easy to do, it doesn't mean that there isn't work required and that aren't skills required.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what the work is, that's why we have this podcast. If you don't know what the skills are, that's why we're here talking about them, dissecting them, because a lot of people miss the mark because they don't know what target they're aiming at. Mm-hmm. And that's okay, but don't let it be you if you have agency.
Yeah. So that's how these attachment wounds can turn into your wrapping paper problems, your beliefs, or wrong beliefs, whatever you want to call it. The top down part we talked about. So yeah, get to the roots. If it doesn't make sense and you can't make sense of it and you're not moving, go deeper. Go what's not in my awareness, what's from childhood, what's unconscious, what attachment wounds do I have, what shadow stuff do I have. Go even learn about what these things mean. Read books, and there's a lot of good stuff online about them. You learn a lot, and then find a good coach or therapist and start working it out. And then you'll get freed up energy, like we just talked about, and things will become clearer, and there'll be less roadblocks or perceived roadblocks. It's really interesting how it works, but it does take work. And that's, back to your point with working out, like this is taking too long, or, I expected this to be done in 3 months, like jacked or healthy. It's the same with therapy. It's a process.
Yeah. But unlike exercise, exercise is nice to have a guide, and there's many guidebooks. I don't think that this work can be done by yourself?
No, there are things you got to do by yourself and the things you must do in relationship, because we were wounded in relationship. Therefore, we must be healed in relationship.
Yeah. I know that it's back to your also this process. Well, I want to wrap up this 3-hour long podcast to say that this is a process of humanizing yourself and humanizing, what may have been referred to as the oppressors or the people who wounded you, because everybody in the process needs to be humanized, but most of all, you.
Bingo. Yeah, little grace, little empathy, but still honoring your story. That's the nuance we need. Back to nuance again. Let's bring that. Let's make that word great again.
Nuance. Yeah. We'll also call it detail, because the nuance just means the level of detail that you're specific to. Because if you want to scapegoat in any of these stories, you could scapegoat poverty, you could scapegoat cultural issues, lack of masculine. You could we could sit here all day and blame shit, but
not do anything about
it. That doesn't get you out of the hole. So hopefully this 3-part series on hope got you helped you identify where you can be more helpful and hopeful, and give you some clarity on where you can spend some time and attention. If you have any questions and or comments, please reach out to Miles directly, especially for the negative comments.
I think in Spotify you can leave comments too, and Apple, I believe. And go ahead and share the podcast if you think this will help anybody. As usual, send it to one person. Otherwise, we will see you next week.
Out.